Lawrence.
Jen, you're so lucky to be there. We will definitely be watching tomorrow night.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be at the ceremony tomorrow all day, too. So looking forward to the day.
That's great. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Well, Donald Trump has made the biggest mistake of his life. Donald Trump has made the mistake that will live in infamy. Donald Trump has given historians the precise comparison they need to label Donald Trump a loser in history forever. And it's all because Donald Trump made the colossal mistake of playing Barack Obama's game. Donald Trump has not tried to do a single thing that President Obama tried to do until now. The comparisons we have so far between the two presidents on policy tend to be simply the differences between Democrats and Republicans, where President Obama dramatically increased availability and affordability of health care in America for millions of people. Donald Trump has done the opposite, taking that health care away, along with the support of every Republican in Congress. Donald Trump took health care away for millions of people. Barack Obama provided health care for millions of people who could otherwise not afford it. Or Donald Trump, like other Republican presidents, signed gigantic, reckless, badly written tax cuts into law, which, like George W. Bush before him, dramatically increased the national debt. President Obama, like President Clinton before him, repaired the fiscal damage of reckless Republican tax cuts by increasing taxes on the rich. And so we have a number of examples in which Donald Trump and Barack Obama did exactly the opposite thing during their presidencies. But now we have exactly one example of Donald Trump trying to do exactly what President Obama did. There is only one such example of Donald Trump choosing to play Barack Obama's game, and Donald Trump has now been humiliated in that game as a desperate loser. And that is the judgment of Donald Trump's own allies and supporters tonight. The only thing that Donald Trump has tried to do that Barack Obama did before him is negotiate a deal with Iran. And so now history has the one apple-to-apple comparison of these two presidencies, these two men. Donald Trump has now proved himself to be not just a worse negotiator than President Obama. Donald Trump has proved himself to be the worst international negotiator in the history of the American presidency, because he has negotiated a memo of understanding with Iran that achieves nothing, gives away everything, and can be compared directly, word for word, with President Obama's 18-page deal with Iran, which was successfully negotiated by Secretary of State John Kerry. We will be joined tonight by people who were key players in John Kerry's negotiating team, including former Ambassador Wendy Sherman, who knows much more about this subject than I ever will. But just to show you how easy it is, what a loser Donald Trump is in this deal, and how easy it is to show that, let's begin with the key sentence, what it's all about. It's on page 3 of Donald Trump's deal. It says, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. Reaffirms, which Donald Trump probably doesn't know, means Iran has said it before, many times. And Iran has said it better. In the deal that President Obama's team, led by John Kerry, negotiated, it appears on page 3 of the 18 pages of the Obama deal, negotiated 11 years ago. And there it says, Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. Donald Trump has always said he has the best words, and now he has proved once again that, of course, he doesn't. The Obama deal, if you want to talk about best words, has better words. It actually does. It has the phrase under no circumstances, which Donald Trump didn't get. The Obama deal has 3 verbs, seek, develop, or acquire. Donald Trump got just 2, procure or develop. And I don't mean to be petty about this, but Donald Trump is very petty. And it is very, very clear that on this single point alone, the Obama-Iran deal has a much stronger sentence, which says, under no circumstances will Iran ever, the word ever appears here, ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. The word ever doesn't appear in Donald Trump's. The word any doesn't appear in Donald Trump's. It's just stronger language in the Obama deal. And Donald Trump's line simply says Iran reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. This is literally the least important distinction that we're going to point out tonight about these two deals. But Donald Trump has made the specific wording of that specific line important by claiming that he and he alone came up with a brand new concept when his negotiators told him that Iran was willing to say, once again, what they've said before, that they will not develop nuclear weapons. Donald Trump claims that he brilliantly told them to go back and make Iran say that they won't buy nuclear weapons. They already said that 11 years ago. And so now Donald Trump's written agreement includes that same concept about not buying nuclear weapons, saying that they won't procure them. Same thing as buy. But you would think that if Donald Trump had even semi-attentive negotiators, they would have said, hey, we have to get a sentence about nuclear weapons that is at least as good as the one Iran put in writing for President Obama. Maybe even exactly the same words that President Obama got. But Donald Trump's negotiators couldn't get that. They didn't. Their language is actually weaker. Slightly weaker, sure, but weaker. It does not say under no circumstances. It doesn't say ever. It doesn't say any nuclear weapons. It does not have the same semantic strength. And in the Trump deal, it has nothing more than its semantic strength, because the Trump deal has absolutely no enforcement mechanism whatsoever about nuclear weapons. None. Zero. And as you will hear in detail tonight, the Obama nuclear deal with Iran had very strong enforcement mechanisms, very detailed enforcement mechanisms, including the right to inspect whatever Iran was doing anywhere in the country. And those inspections were working. And the Obama-Iran deal allowed us to know every day that Iran was not pursuing nuclear weapons in any way. They were complying with the deal. The deal Donald Trump negotiated does not give anyone the right to inspect anything in Iran. It is a complete failure on enforcement. Donald Trump defended what Republicans today have been calling surrender to Iran by lying about President Obama's deal with Iran. Donald Trump has never said one true thing about the Obama deal, and one of his favorite lies is to claim that President Obama just paid Iran to sign the deal. Here's today's version of that lie.
He tried to bribe his way out. I didn't do that. Nobody mentions that. $1.7 billion and hundreds of millions of dollars. They tried to bribe their way out of it. And you know what the Iranians did? They laughed at Obama and they said he's a stupid son of a bitch.
Once again, the standard warning we should be issuing to anyone under, say, 25 years old who might not know that presidents have never spoken about previous presidents that way, and especially never criticized previous presidents while in a foreign country, as Donald Trump was today in France. In the Obama deal with Iran, it was agreed that the United States would hand over money that it had been holding in a trust fund since 1979, when the Shah of Iran made payments to the United States for military equipment that was never delivered after the Shah was overthrown. The first payback of that money came from President George H.W. Bush in 1990, when the first President Bush sent $200 million to Iran. That money was earning interest here every day in the United States, the remainder of that money. And by the time President Obama delivered it, Iran had been living under such strict international banking sanctions that the only practical way to actually deliver that money was in cash, which was actually a mixture of euros and Swiss francs, no U.S. dollars. Obama Treasury official Paul Ahern testified to Congress in 2016, quote, cash was the most reliable way to ensure Iran received the funds in a timely manner, and it was the method preferred by the relevant central banks. Today, Donald Trump has agreed in writing to give Iran more than 100 times the amount of money that was sent to Iran by the Obama administration. The Trump deal says the United States of America undertakes to make fully available for use the frozen or restricted funds and assets of the Islamic Republic of Iran upon the implementation of this memo of understanding. How much money is that? $100 billion. The first payment of which will be $24 billion directly from Donald Trump to Iran. And that's not all. The Trump agreement says the United States of America undertakes with regional partners to develop a definitive mutually agreed plan with at least $300 billion for the reconstruction and economic development of the Islamic Republic of Iran. One right-wing Trump supporter said today, $300 billion to Iran under any circumstances is a disaster, like offering the Marshall Plan to rebuild Germany while the Nazis were still in power. Here was Donald Trump's defense.
Well, the unfreezing is an easy one to answer. We have taken a lot of their money, and we have their money. We have taken their money. It's not our money. It's their money. And we froze it. At a certain point in time, I guess we're going to have to give it back.
So now it's their money. It's not our money. We're going to have to give it back. That was exactly the situation. He's describing the situation President Obama faced with a tiny amount of money compared to what Donald Trump is giving Iran now. Donald Trump is doing exactly the same thing he has condemned President Obama for doing, but Donald Trump is giving Iran much, much, much more money. Donald Trump has already violated his own agreement with Iran. In fact, he violated the very first sentence of the agreement when he threatened to bomb Iran several times today in his comments. If Iran doesn't come up with an even better version of this agreement down the road, the first sentence of Donald Trump's agreement with Iran tonight says that both countries must, as of tonight, refrain from the threat or use of force against each other. So a threat is a violation of the first sentence of Donald Trump's agreement with Iran, and he's already violated that part of the agreement. He's already threatening them. Donald Trump at first tried to deny that the United States would be involved in any way in the $300 billion fund that the deal promises for Iran. But the deal says very clearly in writing that the United States of America, quote, undertakes with regional partners to develop a $300 billion fund. Not only is there nothing about the regime change that Donald Trump said he wanted in Iran on the first night of his war, when he called on the people of Iran to rise up against the murderous dictatorship controlling their lives, now Donald Trump is promising in writing never to interfere in any way in Iran's so-called, quote, internal affairs. And then, in a complete abandonment of the women who suffer every day under the Islamic Iranian dictatorship, in a complete abandonment of every person in Iran who craves the basic freedoms that other countries enjoy so easily, Donald Trump said this about the murderous dictators who oppress the people of Iran every day.
I think they're smarter. I think they're very smart. I think they're far less radicalized, and I think they're really good. They love their country.
Tell that to the women who get arrested for showing their hair. Tell that to the women who've been killed for showing their hair. Imagine the pain of hearing him say that today in Iran. The dictators who oppress your every breath are described by Donald Trump as people who love their country. Donald Trump doesn't know any of those dictators. He has never spoken to any of them. He has never seen any of them. He has never been in a room with any of them. But he is declaring in his judgment to the Iranian people that those murderous dictators love their country. He is telling the women of Iran who have spent years rebelling against this murderous dictatorship that their leaders love them. They love their country. Donald Trump has been at war for 110 days now with people he now says are really good. Those were his words, really good, and they love their country. Donald Trump's first vice president is accusing Donald Trump of appeasement. That's what Mike Pence is calling this. The worst thing you could be accused of in dealing with Adolf Hitler was appeasement. That's where that word entered our politics. The people who tried to engage in appeasement of Adolf Hitler as he was leading Germany into World War II and an attempted mass execution of every Jewish person in Europe. That was Adolf Hitler's ambition, and there were people who were trying to facilitate that ambition in the United States and in Britain and elsewhere in the world. And they were all correctly adjudged to be engaging in the appeasement of Adolf Hitler. And so, when Mike Pence uses that word appeasement today, he is using it to invoke a direct comparison with negotiating with Nazi Germany. Donald Trump didn't have to play Barack Obama's game. This was his choice. If Donald Trump was even half smart, which he is not, he would have recognized that the Obama deal negotiated by John Kerry was the greatest American diplomatic achievement of our lifetimes. And he would have left it in place and benefited hugely from it. But he did the stupidest thing that has been done in American foreign policy in the 21st century and ripped up that deal. And in its place now, we see Donald Trump's appeasement in writing. He never, ever should have tried to play a game that Barack Obama played before him. What's he going to try to do next? Sing?
Amazing grace. Amazing grace. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was
Humanity, dignity, and amazing presidential grace. Disgraceful, heartless vulgarity, relentless stupidity, and cruelty. And it's all there in the record now. It's all there in the video record. It's all there in the written record. Historians now have everything they need to compare these two presidencies and to compare these two men in every way. And Donald Trump is the loser in that comparison in every possible way. He wasn't sure this afternoon in France if he would sign the Memorandum of Understanding with Iran. That left an opening for the Fox-employed bad stand-up comedian who doubles as a White House correspondent to do this.
Why not stick around for the signing ceremony with this Iran peace deal?
I might.
You might?
Yeah, I might. But I'd rather, this is a memorandum of understanding. It's very important, but it might not be the kind of a document that I should be signing.
There's some element to this where you send the vice president. If it works out, great, you look like a genius for sending him. And if it doesn't work out, It's the vice president's
I like that idea, sure. What? This way, if it works out, I'm going to take the credit. If it doesn't work out, I'm blaming J.D. You better be careful, J.D.
Imagine wasting your presidential question time that way. But this evening at the French president's dinner table at Versailles, Donald Trump signed what Republicans are calling a surrender document. Right-wing Trump supporter Eric Erickson called it an American surrender. Donald Trump sent a New York real estate guy with no government experience to play John Kerry's game. And the Trump clownish negotiator delivered what you'd expect from someone who didn't know what he was doing, from someone who didn't have John Kerry's experience from combat in Vietnam, to the Foreign Relations Committee of the United States Senate, to Secretary of State. They think it's easy. And that video you just saw of Donald Trump playing games with the idea of maybe having J.D. Vance sign the document, the most incompetent Commerce Secretary in history, Howard Lutnick, was standing behind Donald Trump doing his usual Lutnick laugh at every inane thing Donald Trump says. But the other person standing right behind Donald Trump seemed to know what he was watching. The grim face of future presidential candidate Marco Rubio never broke into a smile. Marco Rubio possibly watching his presidential hopes disappear right there. Usually eager to match Howard Lutnick in court jester worship of Donald Trump, seemed to know just how badly Secretary of State Marco Rubio himself lost at trying to play Secretary of State John Kerry's game. And so Donald Trump and Marco Rubio have spent years lying about the Obama deal with Iran, and now they have proved two things: just how strong the Obama deal was, and what complete and utter and relentlessly incompetent losers Marco Rubio and Donald Trump really are. Ambassador Wendy Sherman, who was a top negotiator on the team that finalized the Iran nuclear deal for the Obama administration, will join us after this break. Today, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy said this about Donald Trump's Iran deal.
The details that I've seen so far look awful. This will go down as a tremendous foreign policy blunder. Iran ends up stronger. Our allies in the region are weaker. And Iran has learned that if they're willing to grab that Strait of Hormuz and choke it off, they can get the Western world to dance to their tune. I think it's a deep mistake.
Leading off our discussion tonight is Ambassador Wendy Sherman, who, when serving as Deputy Secretary of State in the Obama administration, was a top negotiator on the team that finalized the Iran nuclear deal. Ambassador Sherman, thank you very much for joining us on this important night. Donald Trump began his war demanding the unconditional surrender of Iran. What did he get?
I think he's the one who did pretty much an unconditional surrender. You know, people ask me all the time, and I'm sure they ask Secretary Kerry the same thing: do you feel terrible about what's happened? And my answer to that always is the greatest hurt and pain is what Donald Trump has done to the American people, what he's done to our economy, what he's done to our democracy, and quite frankly, what he's done to the world's economy. I think probably at the G7, the leaders were glad that the Strait of Hormuz was going to open. Of course, it wasn't closed before President Trump started this war. So, of course, they want the economy to get better. But this is not a deal. This is not an agreement. This is a set of principles that require tedious, patient, complex, expert-driven negotiation. And we haven't seen any of that so far.
Let's listen to what Donald Trump said today about enforcement of the deal.
So you're threatening to bomb Iran if they don't comply, but there's nothing enforceable in the deal itself. Is that correct?
Doesn't have to be. I let him know. I said, look, if you don't adhere to the agreement, I don't want to do that, but we're going to bomb the hell out of you.
He's saying there doesn't have to, exact words, there doesn't have to be anything about enforcement in the deal.
That's so naive, it's sort of stunning. You don't know whether a deal has worked, an agreement has worked, unless you have very, very good monitoring and verification. Back in the time of the JCPOA, we had the most extensive monitoring and verification, not only by our intelligence community, but by the International Atomic Energy Agency, including electronic means, including people who could go in any place, anytime, and see what was happening, people on the field, on the ground. So yeah, if your only answer is we're going to bomb them again, you may not even know when somebody is cheating on you unless you've got those eyes on the ground all of the time and really, really good verification and monitoring. You know, you said that the agreement was 18 pages long, which is true. That's the basic text. But when you add all of the annexes, which have all of the technical detail, everything from nuclear enrichment to verification, it was 159 pages. That's how much detail there has to be. And Abbas Araghchi, who is now the foreign minister, was my counterpart in these negotiations. He knows every single detail, and he will bring that to the negotiating table.
Let's listen to what Donald Trump said about the economic catastrophe that he was trying to avoid by simply ending his war.
The one thing I didn't want to see is I didn't want to see economic catastrophe. If you kept this going, that could have happened. But all I know is every time we talked about the possibility of peace, the stock market shot up like a rocket ship. It never went down. If they didn't like it, the people, you know, the stock market is more brilliant than anybody there is, including the people on the stage, other than me, of course.
That's the first time a president of the United States waging a war has referred to the stock market as the barometer for him about how well his war was going.
Look, he's talked a lot today about how he didn't want to be Herbert Hoover. He didn't want to be the person responsible for another crash. We've seen him all through these 110 days, usually on a Friday. He wants the stock market to end up. And so he says, we're almost there. We've almost got a deal. And then if it starts to turn down on Sunday night, we'll hear it again. Everything has been, if you just sort of chart this, connected to the stock market. Well, you know what? Even though people have 401ks, even though they're in the stock market, what they really care about is what their groceries are going to cost, what gasoline is going to cost so that they can take their kids on a summer vacation. Farmers care about what their fertilizer is going to cost, and hospitals care about how much the helium is going to cost for the MRI machine that your loved one might need for surgery. So he's just got the wrong metrics, but this is how he thinks about life. It's not how normal people live.
What did it feel like to you for the last several years of Donald Trump lying about the agreement you negotiated, lying about it every single time he talks about it, still lies about it to this day, and then to see today, this is Donald Trump's version. What did it feel like for you as you read the words today of Donald Trump's version?
It was pretty awful. I can't say I was shocked. This was all done with mediators. And he says there's a gentleman's agreement. And I can tell you, unless the words are on a piece of paper and everybody knows what those words are, with Iran, no gentleman's agreement is worth anything. You've got to really get down into the detail. And so I wasn't shocked. But the real pain, as I've said, is what it's done to people in our country, what it's done to our democracy, and what it's done to the world. That's the real hurt. That's the real pain.
Ambassador Wendy Sherman, thank you so much for your service to this country. Thank you for joining us tonight on this important story.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence.
We will continue this coverage with John Feiner, who was also part of the negotiating team as the chief of staff for Secretary of State John Kerry at the time, and a former Undersecretary of State in the State Department, Rick Stengel, will also join us. That's next. Here's what two of Donald Trump's voters in Florida told MSNOW today about Donald Trump's deal with Iran.
It's just going to blow up in Trump's face, this whole peace agreement. I don't see it happening.
You think this war was worth it?
My friend, I was in Vietnam. It wasn't worth it then, and it ain't worth it now, because they are not accomplishing anything. We're losing our own people, and it's not, like I say, it's not accomplishing anything. We got people that are dying. We had 58,000 in Vietnam die for nothing.
Joining us now is John Feiner. He was Secretary of State John Kerry's chief of staff during the Iran deal negotiations. Also with us, Richard Stengel, former Undersecretary of State during the Obama administration. He's now an MSNOW political analyst. And John, I want to go to one point in the deal that is immediate. It takes effect immediately. It says the United States of America undertakes that immediately upon signing of the memo that the U.S. Department of Treasury will issue waivers for the export of Iranian crude oil, petroleum products, and derivatives, and all assorted services, including banking transactions, insurances, transportation, etc. What does that provision mean for Iran and the fact that it takes effect immediately?
Well, it means Iran is going to be able to sell its oil overseas, and that the United States is going to facilitate those transactions, which will bring a lot of revenue to Iran, which badly needs it. Its economy has been damaged by this war. But basically, another way of saying it is Iran gets paid up front for rebuilding its economy before it takes any steps to reduce its nuclear program. That all gets kicked to a later stage of the talks.
Having worked on the Obama version of this deal with Secretary Kerry, what were your thoughts as you read this one today?
Well, I was thinking back to all of the different attacks that people made against the Iran nuclear deal that President Obama and John Kerry reached, that it didn't include Iran's missile program, that it didn't include Iran's support for terrorist proxies, that it didn't reduce Iran's ability to enrich uranium enough, that it had expiration dates on it. None of that is even relevant, to be honest, to the deal that President Trump has reached, because not only does it not include any of those things, it doesn't actually require Iran to do anything when it comes to its nuclear program. All it has Iran doing is committing not to pursue a nuclear weapon, which, according to our intelligence community, Israel's intelligence community, that's been Iran's policy since the early 2000s. They have not been seeking a nuclear weapon. They have tried to develop a program that might give them the option to have a nuclear weapon if they made a decision to do that. But the commitment that's in this deal is the same commitment Iran has made for almost 2 decades now.
Rick Stengel, Donald Trump, his only way of framing this issue for years now has been to lie about the Obama deal, something which, by the way, White House reporters let him get away with without any real contest as he's doing it. But tonight we have, Trump's now turned in his homework. We now see this is the best he can do, the absolute best he can do. And this is now being condemned by Republicans first.
Well, he went on and on about the $1.7 billion that the U.S. was giving in cash, and you explained very well in the preamble about why it was in cash. Iran is getting an incredible windfall compared to that now seems like a peanuts what they were getting before. If you had said to the mullahs, you know, America's going to attack you, you're going to suffer some damage, but a few weeks later, they're going to get rid of all sanctions. You're going to be able to sell oil. And you're going to have a $300 billion fund that the world is paying to fix all the things that were damaged. They wouldn't believe it.
John Feiner, the opening up of banking transactions immediately for Iran seems like the sort of thing that you would want to hold out as something that's down the road as we can track Iran's progress to doing what Iran is promising to do.
So that's one of many ways in which this deal is very weak and ultimately should be strengthened. But taking a step back, if you launch a bad and unnecessary war, which this administration did, and that war does not go very well, predictably so, which is what's happened here, you're ultimately going to end up with a deal that is not advantageous, not in your interest. Iran had a lot of leverage in these negotiations. That's now quite clear. And I think your point is exactly right. President Trump has been able to claim lots of things about what this war accomplished, what Iran would agree to in the aftermath. And he was able to do that before he actually had to produce a document that everybody can judge for themselves. And now that people are judging that, they're judging it harshly and understandably so.
One thing that Wendy Sherman and John Kerry did not have to negotiate with Iran about was the Strait of Hormuz. It had nothing to do with the negotiation. It had always been open. It had always been flowing freely to shipping. And now we have Iran saying that for 60 days, they won't charge anyone for going through the strait, but only 60 days, and then we don't know what happens.
Yes, and Trump is boasting about reopening the straits that were open before the negotiation. And then there's this 60-day period where everything will supposedly be free. But again, they can inflict tolls in the future. They can make this an incredible windfall to them that they would never had before. And in fact, if you look at the future of the Middle East now, this is hurting all the Gulf nations. It's hurting Saudi Arabia. It's hurting our allies. And Iran is emerging stronger.
Rick Stengel and John Feiner, thank you both very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, Donald Trump's candidate lost in Georgia last night. And today, Donald Trump is trying to pretend that that never happened. That's next.